Hello everyone. I hope people have tuned in. It's 4:30 and it's time for today's lecture on impact of COVID 2019 situation uh, on the relationship that business houses have with their vendors and their employees. And I'll start in a while. I'll wait for few more seconds for more people to join in. And there I see that uh, just a second because I don't see anything here. Yeah, here I'm back. Okay, I think it's time and we should start. So the topic today is impact of COVID 2019 situation on vendor and employee contracts with that a company has with its employees and vendors. First of all, before I start with this topic, let me just dwell upon what is the current situation right now. We know that world has witnessed and experienced onslaught of many viral diseases in the past. However, in the past, these viral diseases and outbreak of these viral diseases were restricted to few regions across the world. But the way this COVID 2019 situation has affected the human race, it is absolutely unprecedented. Currently, the entire energy of the world and international organizations, NGOs, probably every individual on earth is focused towards battling this outbreak of COVID 2019 disease. And certainly, when something is so big, so huge, definitely that phenomena will also have its impact, its effect on businesses, whether it is public business or private business. And certainly the world has been hugely impacted. World economy, India's economy has been hugely impacted. And when we narrow down this impact to one particular business, each business, whether big or small, is currently grappling with a lot of issues, lot of questions. They wish to take certain at times very harsh decisions, but they are restricted or not, whether they can take those decisions or not. That is what today we'll deliberate upon in this session. So before we go ahead and see what is the impact of COVID 2019, first we'll have to understand what is the law that governs the termination of the employees or that governs the contracts that we have with vendors. If we wish to terminate those contracts, what are the laws that govern these relationships? So firstly, I'll start with the employee contracts or relationship that a company has with its employees. So we know that industrial relations are governed by Industrial Disputes Act. That is the act which governs the industrial relation between a workman and an employer. Before I give you the definition of workman, before I give you the definition of all the technical words in Industrial Development Act, we have to understand and appreciate that any relationship between an employer and an employee emerges out of a conscious decision on part of the employer and the employee that we wish to come together, associate together, and there'll be a consideration for each one of us. I will pay you as an employer and you will work for me as my employee. So it's a private and mutual relationship that exists, and many a time there is a written contract between the employers and employees which just freezes the terms and conditions between them, and at times the contracts are unwritten but implicit. So what we understand it that it's a private decision, it's a mutual decision between employer and employee to come together and form a relationship. So it's a relationship which emerges out of a contract. However, every employee is not treated at par in eyes of law. There is a category of employees which is known as workmen, for whose protection we have specific laws, and in order to ensure that the employer is not able to take arbitrary decisions when it comes to workmen and is not able to form policies, take decisions which have adverse effect on the interest of these employees, which are known as workmen. Industrial Disputes Act is the act which defines what is a workman. If we just look at the definition of the term workman, it says that it includes any person who is employed in any industry to do manual, skilled, unskilled, technical, operational, clerical, or supervisory work, whether the terms of employment be express or implied. So a while back I was just telling you that a contract may be written or may be unwritten. So here also the definition itself clarifies of the workman that the terms of employment may be express or implied. So implied contracts are also covered under the definition of workman. And if you are an employee who's employed to do manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical, or supervisory work, you shall be deemed to be a workman. However, there are only two exceptions to this definition. If you are employed to do managerial or administrative work, then you are not a workman. And if you are employed in supervisory capacity, and also in addition to being employed in supervisory capacity, you draw wages exceeding 10,000 per month, then you shall not be deemed to be a workman. So these terms that I use, manual, skilled, unskilled, technical, operational, clerical, or supervisory, these are wide enough terms to include almost every sort of employee working in a company, in an industrial establishment. So workman, the definition of workman ensures that the impact, that the scope of Industrial Disputes Act is very big, and it encompasses in itself lots of employees. In fact, practically all the employees except the ones who are working in managerial, administrative, or supervisory capacity. And when it comes to supervisory capacity, there is an added requirement that such employees should draw salary more than 10,000 per month. And now when we dwell upon this definition a little more, then courts have had the occasion to interpret this term, and they've held and observed that it's not the designation which decides who is workman, it's the nature of your duties, it's the primary duties which is the decisive factor to come to a conclusion whether you are a workman or not. So there are a number of case laws on this. There is a very famous case, Burma Shell Oil Storage and Distributing Company Limited Madras versus their employees. This is a Supreme Court judgment. There are other cases also, Lloyds Bank Limited versus Pannalal Gupta. This is a 1967 judgment. These judgments and several other judgments discussed the scope of definition of workman, and it was held that primary duties is the decisive factor and not the designation of the worker. Now coming to managerial and administrative capacity. What exactly is managerial and administrative capacity? Basically, as a manager or an administrative person, you should have power to sanction leave, to enter into contract on behalf of the company, to probably take disciplinary action against the other employees. So these many duties which can deem that you are out of the definition of workman are that you have certain powers with you with respect to other employees. Then only you shall be deemed to be a managerial employee. Courts have had the occasion to interpret this word also, and in fact senior lawyers, senior accounts officer, senior taxation officer responsible for sales tax return, etc. have also been held as workmen under this act because they did not have managerial powers with them. They were not entitled to sanction leaves. They were not entitled to enter into contract on behalf of the company. Similarly, supervisory capacity. When we try and understand what does this entail, it only means that you have the power to designate work to others. You have the power to decide what will others do. You have the power to supervise their work. You have the power to take reports from them. So if you have these powers and you are drawing a salary of more than 10,000 rupees then per month, then you shall be out of the definition of workman. Why are we discussing the definition of workman? Because there are certain benefits which are granted to workmen when their services are terminated under Industrial Disputes Act. Let's just look at what are those benefits which are granted to workmen. Firstly, You cannot retrench or terminate any employee unless and until you've served that workman with a 1 month notice. If you've not served a notice on them, you should have given wages to them in lieu of this 1 month notice. Second requirement, which is a very crucial requirement from the perspective of employer, because it adds to your outgo, it requires you to pay retrenchment compensation to each workman when you are terminating their services. There is a strict formula which is given under the Industrial Disputes Act, according to which you have to pay this retrenchment compensation. You have to pay 15 days wages for each completed year of service to your workman. For example, if your workman has worked with you for 3 years, so you will pay 15 days wages for first year of completed services, then 15 days of wages for second year of completed service, and 15 days wages for third year. So in all, it will be 45 days of wages that you shall be paying to that workman as retrenchment compensation. Third requirement is that your decision to terminate your workman is not only your internal decision. You have to involve authorities here. You either have to serve notice to labor commissioners, your regional labor commissioner, or you have to take prior permission from your labor commissioner. Now, whether you have to just inform, intimate, or take prior permission, that depends on the number of workmen that are working in your organization. So if the number of workmen is 100 or more, then you have to take prior permission. If it is less than 100, then you just have to intimate. A lot of states have amended this particular provision and they've increased this number of workmen to 300 also. So this part differs in different states in its application. ID Act has been amended by several states in its application to those specific states. Now these are the compensation, these are the specific 3 conditions which you have to follow if you are terminating your employees. I'll go back to retrenchment definition. Here, in any which way, whenever you terminate the services of your workmen, that shall be deemed to be retrenchment. However, it does not include if you've terminated your workman as way of punishing that employee, that workman, after you've conducted disciplinary action against that workman and you've arrived at a conclusion that yes, that workman was guilty of certain misconduct. Secondly, if that workman is voluntarily retiring, then also it is not included within the definition of retrenchment. Thirdly, the fixed term employees, the fixed term workmen, if you do not renew their contracts, then also that kind of termination of service of workmen shall not be included in the definition of retrenchment. And lastly, termination of the service of workmen on the ground of continued ill health. So if workman has been unwell and has not been able to work for a continued period, considerable time, then you can retrench him without following these 3 specific conditions, which is notice, retrenchment compensation, and intimation to authorities. The Chapter 5A and Chapter 5B of Industrial Disputes Act are the relevant provisions which talk about these particular provisions. So far what is clear is that there is a specified law, there are very specific provisions which deal with termination of your workmen. I'll come to COVID 2019 situations later, that how these laws, existing laws, are impacted by notifications and Epidemic Disease Act and Disaster Management Act later. First, I'll discuss the other category of employees who are not workmen. So for employees who are not workmen, primarily who are working as in managerial capacity or in administrative capacity or in supervisory capacity, for such employees, the relationship is governed by the contract that you've executed with your employees. So it is basically, the contract is in form of employee appointment agreement, appointment letter, offer letter, company policies which are applicable to employee relationships, and these contracts lay out everything, whether how the services will be terminated, how the employee will be reinstated, if at all any severance or retrenchment compensation is to be paid. So the contracts usually are explicit when it comes to termination, etc., of the employees. However, even if they are not, there is a law, and there is an implied law also which is applicable. We'll discuss that. One very important thing which has become very relevant in today's context is force majeure, which is the it word these days. Everybody is discussing. Force majeure is a term which is not defined in Indian law expressly, but it finds mention. Force majeure clauses always find mention in contracts executed in India. If we were to understand what exactly is force majeure clause, the basic understanding, the basic object, if we are able to understand the basic intent behind this force majeure clause, we'll be able to understand what exactly it encompasses. Actually, the intention is to save the performing party from the consequence of anything over which the performing party does not have control. So if you are restricted in performance of your contract because of certain reasons which are not in your control, that shall be deemed to be a force majeure event. To a large extent, the fate of the contract depends on the wordings of the force majeure clause in your contract. A usual force majeure clause provides for several things. It provides for several things, but usually it provides for 3-4 things. Firstly, it provides that the contract shall stand suspended during the period during which the force majeure event subsists. It may also provide that the parties shall have right to terminate the contract if the force majeure persists for a certain period of time. It may also provide that the parties shall have right to negotiate or modify the terms again if the force majeure persists. For example, if you are supplying any raw material to a manufacturing company, and due to force majeure, let's say talking in current context, there is lockdown, your trucks cannot ply on road unless and until you are not into essential services. If your trucks cannot ply, you cannot supply, then obviously you are restricted in performance of your contract by a reason which is not in your hands, which is beyond your control. Certainly it is a force majeure situation, and you shall be given relaxation. There will be consequences to such a situation. However, all these consequences, all these relaxations, all the entire relationship between you and the opposite party during such time shall depend on how your force majeure clause is worded in your contract. As opposed to this, there is a concept in Indian Contracts Act which is frustration of contracts, which is codified in section 56 of Indian Contracts Act, which is quite similar to force majeure. But in frustration of contracts, you have to prove, to claim benefit under this clause, you have to prove that you were entirely restricted in performance of your contract, meaning thereby that it was absolutely impossible for the party to perform contract. And if you are able to prove that, you shall not be held liable for performance, and the contract shall be deemed to be void. So even if your contract does not have force majeure clause in your contract, then also you can be covered under frustration of contracts, as it is incorporated in section 56 of Indian Contracts Act. So now we'll discuss all the notifications and how this entire law has been affected by COVID 2019 situation. First, I'll give a quick recap. So what we've seen is that there are two kinds of employees in a company. First, workmen who's defined under Industrial Dispute Act, and then we can say, if we were to give a loose layman term to the people who are not workmen, then we may say the higher managerial personnel. So the treatment is different. For workmen, if you want to terminate, it is not just your decision. If you want to take that decision, there are certain preconditions. You have to pay retrenchment compensation. You have to serve notice and take prior permission or intimate the authorities. And when it comes to managerial personnel who are not workmen, then it is governed, your relationship with such employees is governed by the contract that you have in place with them, with such employees. Now, how is it affected? Firstly, we need to see that the first notification which came in this series of notification by central and state government was in the initial days of March, wherein the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare advised the state governments to invoke the provisions of Epidemic Diseases Act 1897, and they asked the state governments to declare COVID 2019 as a special epidemic, special situation, to declare it as epidemic and to issue certain regulations in this respect. So what Epidemic Disease Act does is that it empowers the state government and central government to lay down a special procedure of laws which shall be followed during the period during which this certain special condition or epidemic disease persists. And under using this power, the state governments, several state governments, Delhi, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, these have issued COVID 2019 regulations 20 for applicable on these specific states. So central government also in its turn used and invoked the provisions of Disaster Management Act. So Disaster Management Act is slightly wider than Epidemic Disease Act because it covers everything, every sort of disaster, need not be just any epidemic disease, but every sort of disaster. And it was enacted for providing for effective management of disasters and for matters connected therewith. So central government also issued notifications under Disaster Management Act, and state governments also issued notifications under your Epidemic Disease Acts. Few states like Haryana, Maharashtra, they issued orders in form of advisories. Advisories to the effect, they requested the companies, private establishments and public establishments that during COVID 2019 situation, the companies, the private establishments are requested not to terminate their employees and not to deduct salaries or wages of the employees. So this is now getting interested. We have an existing legal regime in our country which is codified in Indian Contracts Act, which is codified in labor laws also. However, irrespective of that, by using powers under Epidemic Disease Act, the advisories were issued by Haryana and Maharashtra and several other states asking private establishments not to terminate employees or not to deduct wages. Things were still clear for private employers till this date when these advisories were issued, because these were in form of advisories. So what does advisory mean? That you may either follow it or you may choose to ignore it, because it is only an advisory. It is not mandatory for you to follow. So companies were under the impression, employees were under the impression that they could very well go ahead and ignore these advisories and terminate the services of their employees, or probably reduce the outgo for wages. They can reduce wages. So however, after some time, Home Secretary of India issued order dated 29th of March 2020, which directed all employers, whether it is industry or any shop or establishment, to make payment of wages of their workers on due date without any deduction during the period of lockdown. So which meant that everybody was supposed to follow. However, this 29th March notification came at a later date, on 29th March, but these advisories were in place for quite a while. In between, there was a judgment which was passed by Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, in writ petition entitled Alak Alok Srivastava versus Union of India. I would like to read out what the exact observation that was made by Supreme Court in this case. It related to something else. It related to actually migrant workers, not related to employees or vendor contracts. However, this observation is important which has been made in this particular judgment. It says, disobedience to an order promulgated by a public servant would result in punishment under section 188 of Indian Penal Code. An advisory which is in the nature of an order made by a public authority attracts section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So why this particular 3 or 4 lines are important for this purpose is that advisory, which is in the nature of an order made by public authority, attracts section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. Epidemic Disease Act provides that all the violation of this act shall be punishable by section 180, shall be punishable under section 188 of Indian Penal Code. Alright, it was understood. But nobody thought that these advisories shall be punishable. Violation of these advisories shall also be punishable under section 188. However, this Supreme Court judgment said that you are now bound to follow advisories issued by public servants, and it shall be deemed to be violation of section 188, thereby meaning it shall be deemed to be violation of Epidemic Disease Act. So now we can see that the existing law, which exists in form of Industrial Disputes Act and Contract Acts, we need to explore whether this decision will take precedence over these laws. The straight answer is yes. Obviously, Supreme Court is an apex court. It when it interprets something, it puts to rest the controversy. It has done that with this judgment, with this observation, that we are bound to follow these advisories. Now, combined effect of this Home Secretary's order, which was issued on March 29, 2020, and this Supreme Court judgment, the effect is that as of now, during the lockdown period, the private establishments cannot terminate their employees. They cannot even in fact pay reduced wages. In fact, there is a specific provision on the Reduced Wages Industrial Disputes Act, which is called layoff. Layoff simply means that you can pay for a period of 45 days reduced wages, only 50% of wages to your workmen, if you do not have enough business, if there are certain reasons which are mentioned there, and natural calamity is one of the reasons. So here we can see that this central notification has almost made it impossible for companies to terminate their employees or reduce wages. Interestingly, there are states which have already issued similar notifications to this effect. For instance, a state like Tamil Nadu, Telangana, they have issued notifications under the COVID regulation 2020 itself. These regulations in Telangana and Tamil Nadu provide that if you will terminate the workmen or employees or contractual employees during this period of lockdown, then you shall be liable, you shall be deemed to be in violation of Epidemic Disease Act, and you shall be punished under section 188 of Indian Penal Code. So as far as position of employees is concerned, for a while employers cannot terminate their employees, and in fact they cannot even pay reduced wages to them. Now coming to the contracts with vendors. Well, vendors are on equal footing, and our country has enacted these labor legislations. The idea behind these labor legislation is to ensure that employers who are in a more powerful position as compared to employees, they do not abuse their power, and they do not take arbitrary decisions which adversely affect the employee body in general. So as opposed to this, the vendors, a supplier of goods or services, and the user of goods and services, they are at equal footing. So there are no similar laws to protect interest of either. The relationship for both of them is governed by Indian Contract Act, and as I mentioned a while back, that it will entirely depend on the force majeure clause in your contract, whether you can terminate that contract, whether your contract can remain under suspension during this period of lockdown, or whether you are allowed to renegotiate those terms and come to a conclusion wherein you decide what will be the way forward between the two of us, whether we shall be able to continue with this contract, whether we should give it a break and resume it after some time when the situation looks better, when the lockdown is not in place. So it entirely depends on force majeure clause. If there is no force majeure clause in your contract, you can take recourse to section 56 of Indian Contract Act, which provides for frustration of contract if you can prove that performance of your contract is absolutely impossible then you can probably take then you can probably take advantage of that section and say that I should not be held liable for performance under this contract, because now the entire purpose has been frustrated, the entire object has been frustrated, and there is no way that I can perform under this contract. So this is basically the jurisprudence is as of now is evolving, because these notifications vis-a-vis the existing legal provisions have not been interpreted by courts. So I'm sure in times to come, courts will have the opportunity, High Court and Supreme Court will have the opportunity to interpret these notifications, to find out what is the scope of these notifications, what is the scope of these orders, and will have to come at a conclusion which will take precedence. Also, we have to keep in mind here, consider one more thing, that several of these notifications are not enacted by government level. They are enacted at executive level, and district magistrates have passed these orders. Interestingly, I'd like to mention here that Noida's DM has passed an order wherein he has directed all the private employers not to terminate the services of their workmen and not to pay reduced wages. So this is very interesting situation. As of now, if we were to conclude, then we could say that the companies should take it slow. We understand that the business revenue streams, the profit streams are right now dwindled or probably non-existent. Despite that, the companies will have to take that burden of outgo on the payment of the salaries or wages of their workmen and employees. However, when it comes to vendor, they can considerably reduce their outgo by just discussing it with them, or by invoking the provisions of force majeure as given in their contracts, which govern the relationship between them and their vendors. So here it's a very small topic, because and I think I've finished whatever I wanted to say. I could discuss all the notifications which have been issued by several states. However, I would like everybody to discuss here and come up with questions, because the jurisprudence on this particular topic is still evolving. It's in a nascent stage. Courts have had not the occasion to interpret these provisions. So that is why, if any one of you who would like to ask any questions, I'll be happy to discuss. I may not have answers right now, because right now all the lawyers, I'm sure many lawyers like me have been asked by their clients that what is the way forward, what is the future course of action, can we terminate our employees or not, can we suspend our vendor contracts or not. So what is the way forward? And based on the interpretation of the existing laws, and also on these notifications that is being issued every day, almost every day, by some state or the other, we can just interpret and give our opinion and interpretation on this, because there is the controversy as to which law, whether the state law, state notifications, central notifications, central act in form of ID Act, or the state labor legislation like Shops and Establishment Act, which one will take precedence. So I would like somebody to ask any question if anybody has, or probably share any other lawyer who would like to share his or her experience while that lawyer may have experienced while advising his or her clients. So here Mr. Alok Prakash says, excellent topic chosen. Subject is being, no questions. Okay, so I don't see any questions, some comments here, but no questions. So anybody who would like to ask any question. Here I would like to mention one more thing that comes to my mind right now when as far as employees are concerned. You must have heard, and I'm sure all lawyers know this, that employees by humongous corporations are also employed through manpower agencies. So what happens in this arrangement is that a large number of employees are not directly on your rolls. You are not their direct employer, but they are contractual labor who are employed through a contractor. So whether these retrenchment provisions are applicable to such contractual employees, yes, these are applicable to contractual employees also. Through interpreting the existing law, the definition of workman, definition of industry, and also the judicial precedent, it has been concluded that contractual employees are covered, very well covered under Industrial Disputes Act retrenchment provision, and they are very well entitled to receive all the benefits which are there under Industrial Disputes Act. Here I have one question. Just one second. If expressly there is no force majeure in the contract, but the contract mentions certain bylaws will govern it, then can reliance be placed on those bylaws to make use of force majeure? Oh, that's a very good question, and I would like you to contribute to this question, Shomindu. However, my opinion is that lot of employee contracts mention that your employment shall be governed by this contract and company policies and bylaws. So I would say, as an employee, my opinion is that if I have not seen those policies or bylaws before signing, how can those bylaws or policies be applicable on me? That is my opinion and my understanding. However, as an employee, when you are working somebody's employee, some employer's employee, you are expected to read those policies, etc. That is very right, that usually a lot of issues are not exactly written down in your contracts, but they are dealt in detail in your company policy. Here, one more thing that will be relevant here, Shomendu, is that lot of times when we are working as employee, then employees also accept the applicability of those policies on themselves, because they are granted leaves under those policies. Whenever a misconduct is conducted by anyone, the disciplinary action, the disciplinary procedure, etc., all that is taken care of in your policies, and you surrender to its jurisdiction. You accept it, you accept its applicability. So then it may be difficult for you to say that I have not read it, so it is not applicable to me. So to sum it, it will be applicable provided the employer can prove that employee has knowledge about these policies and is well conversant with these policies. Rahela Khan, I hope I pronounced the name right. She asks, what if no contract has been signed? Just one second, I can't click this. Between the employer and employee, and there is only an appointment letter. In that situation, I can't see your entire question for some reason. You've written more, but I'll answer. Yeah. And the employer wants to let go of the employee during this lockdown. See, what we've seen, Ms. Khan, right now, what we've discussed here, that you cannot, as of now, you cannot terminate your workman, because specific order to that effect, and also by implicitly because of that Supreme Court judgment that we discussed, Alak Alok Srivastav's case, that you cannot surpass, you cannot violate the orders that are passed by public servants. Also, there are specific COVID 2019 regulations in place by specific states. In addition to that, thirdly, 29th March notification by Home Secretary, which asks you, which makes it mandatory for all the employers to follow it, and it specifically says that you cannot terminate. Also, you cannot pay reduced wages. So in my understanding, even if there is no contract as of now between the employer and employee, the employee cannot be terminated as long as this lockdown is in place. Again, this is only an opinion, and it remains to be seen whether these notification will hold good when it comes to court, when they are, if at all they are challenged before court. A question by Alok: if an employee has not given any offer letter but he's working since last, how to deal with it if employers terminate? Well, if you are an employee there, whether there is a contract of employment or not, you are certainly an employee. If there are company policies in place, which we were discussing a while back, obviously your employment will be governed by those policies. If there are no policies, then you will be your relationship will be determined and governed and regulated by the by Contract Act also, by labor laws also. If you are a workman, certainly there is a very detailed labor law regime in place in our country, at central level also, at state level also. So I think, despite the fact that there is no contract of employment, you shall be benefited and protected. Can I terminate the services of the workmen who are in their probation period? Oh, that's a very good question, Divya here. Divya Goyal has asked that. Divya, see, I think I forgot to mention here, all the retrenchment provisions as contained in labor laws, they are, and they give benefit, they provide benefit to those workmen who've been in service for 1 year or more. So in any case, even if, let's suppose, these notifications by center and state and district magistrates were not in place, then also you could have easily terminated the services of a person who was in probation period, because usually probation period lasts for 3 to 6 months. And also, while you are in probation period, you are not a confirmed employee of the company. You are a temporary worker. So temporary, we discussed that in retrenchment, that termination of service of employee who was only for a fixed term, that is not deemed as retrenchment. However, after coming into picture, after these notifications coming into picture, you cannot terminate services of that workman also who is in his or her probation period. That is my opinion. That is how I interpret it. But I would love to hear what others are following and what other lawyers are advising their clients. That's a very good question. I hope I've answered Alok's, Divya's, Rahela Khan's and Shomendu's question. I would like Shomendu to add here, because that was a very good question. If there is no force majeure, if in your experience you've handled any contract which did not have force majeure, I would love to hear and would love to share it with everyone who's listening, who's tuned in. Alright, I don't see any more questions coming. With that, I'd like to wrap up today's session. And in fact, I have a suggestion here. We can discuss more on this topic, and I would like some other person who has handled similar situation in his, either as an in-house lawyer or as an external counsel who has advised his or her clients. That person, if can come in another session and share his or her experience, that will be great for all of us to understand and evolve jurisprudence on this particular subject. And thank you very much for listening to me, and thanks to Lawyers Wit and Tarveen for organizing this lecture, not just this lecture, for this entire initiative. And I'm hoping that I was able to fill in shoes, the big size shoes of my seniors, Mr. Malhotra and Madam Manjula, and also my younger colleague Jahanvi. There is a question by Noheed, someone says. Let me just take that question and then we'll wrap. If I've missed that question, no, I don't see that question. I don't see that question. Probably that has been deleted. So as I was saying, I'm very thankful to Lawyers Wit and Tarveen. Tarveen, that's a great initiative. You would like to hear experiences of fellow lawyers, colleagues who are in this fraternity, working every day. And in fact, I feel our fraternity has been working day and night despite lockdown. So all the best everyone, and stay safe, stay healthy, take care. And